Welcome to Wellspring on the Air. I'm Tova, president and co-founder of Wellspring Counseling, and I'm the host of today's show about Wellspring Restore Retreats, how to get over bad things that have happened to us. Today, our show is called Restoring Hearts and Minds Through Trauma Recovery. And with me to discuss this today, I have three interesting guests who have each attended a Restore Retreat. So I'm going to have them introduce themselves to you. They're just using their first names, and this is an audio recording, but we're going to let you get to know each one of them just a little bit. So, Emily?
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a wife, a mom, and a pastor. And I attended a Restore retreat because I was really encouraging two others to join me in that process. And I found it was a blessing and a benefit for myself.
Awesome. Thank you. And Jim?
Yes, my name's Jim. I live in Miami. I'm a businessman and a father of two, and I've experienced some difficult seasons of my life, both in my childhood and throughout my adult life, and really considered it a blessing and a wonderful opportunity to be able to experience what Restore had to offer and all the wonderful content. And looking forward to today's show.
Great. Thank you for being here. And Madeline?
Hi, my name's Madeline. I'm a mother of two and a grandmother of six. And I was very fortunate to find Wellspring at a time in my life when I experienced a very traumatic experience. And I benefited a great deal from being able to attend the retreat. And I'm here to discuss my experience.
Awesome. I'm really grateful to each of you willing to share your testimonies a little bit and hopefully be an encouragement to people who listen to this show that the Restore retreats at Wellspring's work, but trauma therapy can be had in a lot of different ways. You can go for counseling in a variety of ways and pastoral care and all different ways of getting well. The important thing is that we can get over these tragic things that happen in our lives that are hard. So stay with us. We've got some interesting stories for you to hear, and we hope they're encouraging to each of you listening. And, you know, the topic is relevant to everybody, even if you haven't experienced a trauma yet, because you know people who have, and odds are kind of high that sooner or later you will also. So this is a topic that applies to each one of us. We think that we know because our parents tell us that bad things are going to happen to us, and we expect our cars to break and to have relationship troubles and for our picnics to get rained out, and we expect those things. But to be honest, most of us are actually quite optimistic that those bad things, the really bad things that we hear about on the news or to other people, they'll never really happen to us. We're actually pretty optimistic people. And when they do, we're shocked, we're surprised, we're thrown off course, it shakes us to our core because somehow we really didn't ever expect those things. And so that's what we're talking about today, is some of those kind of life affecting things that happen. So, but the first thing before we get into it is I just want to talk about a little bit about the difference between bad things that happen and trauma. So traumatic events are simply extremely bad things. They are it's a matter of degrees. But the difference in it is a little bit that when something is actually dangerous to our very being, our physical being, or our way of life as we know it, then our bodies kick in to help us survive. And when we get in that survival mode, our bodies help us fight back. So we attack the danger, flight, run away from it until it, doesn't get us, or freeze until it passes us. And so it's just everything in our body changes, our hormones change and adrenaline rushes, and the way our brain functions change, our words get shut down. And so because all these physiological things are happening during extremely traumatic events, we store the memories in a different way. And so it's just different the way we experience it, and that it also takes some different ways on how to resolve it. So I want to just stay here for just a second and see if any of you guys want to answer or talk about the difference between bad things and traumatic things. And again, it's all a matter of degrees. So does anyone have anything you want to add to this?
Well, Tova, I totally agree with you that there's a full spectrum of, in life that we live, we're going to experience everything from an inconvenient flat tire, to a loss of a job, to a loss of a loved one, to abuse in our life, or living through a natural disaster. What I've learned, because I've been at this for a while, trying to stay on a path of healthiness, is that some of the trauma that I could experience might be very much in my face, very evident. And then some could be passively brought into my life. It could be the absence of something that creates a tremendous void and pain in my life. And I think the telltale sign that I kind of measure things by are, is it affecting me today?
Mm-hmm.
Is it holding me back from everything I was called to be today? Am I a lesser person? Am I experiencing lesser freedom, less passion, or less intimacy in relationships? Am I able to feel contentness in the life that I'm living? Or is there something that's holding me back?
It's a great segue into what I was going to say next, which is that we have these things that happen to us or don't happen to us, but are still very affecting, the neglect pieces. But what matters on whether we're damaged is not that it happened. It's how we experience the memory. So once it's passed, it's always just a memory. It's not still happening today, generally. Sometimes we're still in the middle of it, but it becomes a part of what's stored in our brain, not a reality around us, if you think of past events, right? So
Right.
the question is, what makes those events damaging to us? Because it's a bit of a myth that, oh, if somebody dies, you'll be damaged. Oh, if this happens, you'll be damaged. The truth is, we're damaged not by what happens to us, but how we feel about what happened to us, and how it affected what we believe about ourselves, what we believe about the world, the dysfunctional ways that we now protect ourselves from ever getting hurt again. Those are damaging, but the event itself isn't. It's what we learned from it. And the good news about that is that because that's the part that is damaging, how we believe about ourselves and how we behave in the future, that's actually all curable. You can't change the past. People are like, oh, I can't change the past. Well, you can't, but you can change how you feel about the past. So I have, I call it 3 types of memories. So we have resolved bad memories, we have unresolved bad memories, and we have unresolved traumatic memories. So the goal is that we have all our memories, both traumatic and bad, become resolved memories. And you can tell those because when you think about them or talk about them, you don't have a lot of emotional charge. It's just a very mild emotional response. And it means that at some point you have grieved this, processed this, made sense of this, integrated it into who you are. This happened in my life, but I'm okay. You have a sense of peace about it, as just a part of your life, but not defining or still holding you back, like Jim, you were saying. Unresolved bad memories are not like that. They're the bad things that we are still, that if you think about it, you feel an emotional charge, you feel that come up, or just upsetting feelings, and you are altering your life because of it. Like again, like Jim was saying, you're having some way that you're behaving differently. You're either protecting yourself or not trusting or feeling insecure or bad about yourself or unlovable or something that is still carrying with you. And that means you haven't truly processed those events. And the third is unresolved traumatic memories. And traumatic memories are similar. They just you experience them a little differently, so they can come intrusively. The memories intrude on your life, and nightmares and flashbacks, they invade you. And they're also very sensory, sight, sound, smells, and triggered by those things, and less verbal. The memories are more experiential, sensory, and less verbal. So they're still just bad memories, but they just tend to be held in your brain and in your emotions a little bit different way. So let me stop there and see what you guys might want to add to that piece of that idea.
Well, Tova, I'd like to add that I have always considered myself a person that is resilient and able to fix things and handle things well. And there's nothing that can prepare you for an extremely traumatic event, as in my husband's suicide. And I felt myself completely unable to handle that.
Mhm.
And I don't think I would be alone in that. I think that would be fairly commonplace. I don't think that, I don't know of anyone that could handle that without intervention.
It's an example, and I really appreciate your courage again in sharing your testimony with us. It's an example of a truly traumatic event, an extreme event that no one would ever be prepared for, and that wouldn't shake your entire being in the way I've just described a traumatic memory. So to you, you really, that was traumatic and not just a bad thing. That's for sure.
And what you said about having intrusive thoughts, sensory panic attacks, and not being able to make sense of it is absolutely true for me.
Yeah. And the thing about when I teach about trauma, the thing about it is we actually consider all of those symptoms and many more, body issues and inability to focus and withdrawing and things feeling surreal and not being able to focus. All those things are actually normal symptoms of having experienced an extreme event like that. We don't even call it post-traumatic stress disorder until that lasts for months. So the normalcy where you're saying you think that's a common response, that is absolutely 100% true. But when you're in it, you feel crazy. It's like, this isn't me. It's not the normal me, but it is actually normal responses to trauma. And then if it doesn't resolve with enough opportunities to heal, then it can develop into a lifelong state of being of post-traumatic stress without professional help, as you said. Well, let me comment on that very quickly and say that Wellspring specializes in trauma. Any therapist who comes and joins us, great professional that they are, and Christian therapists, we still pressure them all the way through to get specialization in trauma. And so we have a whole bunch of trauma specialty with us. And because that's our specialty at Wellspring, that's our giveaway. So, and our programs. And so we have two programs that are specific to trauma recovery that are both intensive therapy. One is called Bounce, and it's for youth, and it's right now it's funded mostly by the county, and so it's free for most kids. And it's a 1-week intensive Bounce program for youth to get over bad things that have happened to them. And then we have the Restore Retreat, which is what we're talking about here today, and having some adult testimonies. And it's really the same as the Kids Bounce, just the adult version of it. So we have these two programs. If you're interested in listening to this, you can go to our website, wellspringmiami.org /restore, or just hunt for Restore on there. We have a whole page on it, and you can find out about the next one coming up, and you're welcome to it. So we're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be right back. I just want to thank our sponsors who make the production of our podcast possible for all of us to hear and to do. And when we come back, we'll hear more about our guests and their own experience in the Restore retreats and in their trauma recovery. Welcome back to Wellspring on the Air. This is Tova, Wellspring co-founder and president. And if you're just joining our show, our topic today is restoring hearts and minds through trauma recovery. And so far, we've talked about different types of memories and what the difference between trauma and other things. If you joined us late on this show, you can find us on your favorite podcast channel on Wellspring on the Air, or on our website blog page at wellspringmiami.org. Just search for this topic on Restore. And but we've got 3 guests with us, Emily, Jim, and Madeline today, each of whom has participated in a Restore retreat, different ones. But I'm just going to ask them some questions, throw it out there, and let's hear some of their experiences about it. So the first question I had for you was, what helped you decide to attend?
So I had 2 friends that were in trauma mode, and I knew that if they had someone to go alongside them, that they might do the Restore retreat. And they did, and it very much benefited both of them, but I didn't realize what a benefit it would be to myself. And I think even though I wasn't there specifically for a trauma that I had realized was traumatic, what the retreat did for me was allow me to retreat into what I had experienced recently, and really discovered that it was more traumatic than I allowed myself to feel and to process. And also, I went back to childhood memories that obviously were unresolved and learned how I had viewed my own voice, my own um, ability to speak into situations, believing lies that my voice didn't matter.
Mm.
So it was a very, very productive few days for me, a gift to me.
I'm so glad. And thank you for sharing that. With the kids who come, the youth who come, we really do qualify them to come, and they really have to have a traumatic event to work on. They haven't lived long enough to have lots of them like that from their childhood. But for the rest of us, we don't do that with the adults. Anyone can come, and they could come and work on 4 or 5 different things at the same time. So,
Well,
go
for
ahead.
me, it didn't take a whole lot of persuasion, because at the time when when I found out about the retreat, I was in therapy probably twice a week, and I just felt like that I wanted to do anything, try anything that was going to help me to, get what I thought, get over it, which, and it was interesting what Emily said. I also uncovered a lot of childhood trauma at the time and it helped me to see how the two things were related.
They really are, Madeline. We know research-wise that if people have repeated traumas, different kinds of things, that the resilience, the ability to bounce back is diminished because of chronic or constant. So because it's kind of like you didn't get the full recovery each time, so you're a little less resilient. So I think going back and clearing the old out in the present is wise and very, very helpful. Jim, you're a guy here, so our male representative. So what made you come, and was that a barrier for you at all? Just like, what do you think?
Well, I take great responsibility in representing the masculine crowd out there. I had a lot of faith in Wellspring. I've utilized the counseling for both me and family members, and just know that the organization is highly capable. And when I heard about the Restore opportunity, of course, we all live busy lives, and so all those excuses came flooding in, and why I couldn't possibly set aside 4 days to do it. But in the end, I'm a firm believer that the healing process and just the growth process is a lifestyle. So I look for these opportunities, and I'm glad I did. The content and the opportunity to do what I call more excavation, where you're kind of digging into what's going on. And it's interesting that each person kind of made a connection between childhood and whatever trauma is kind of the most recent, or what's going on as a difficulty in your life, because I have found that there's a connection between the two, and how I'm reacting in the current crisis. I tend to draw back to some of these beliefs that I formed in my younger years, and hopping into the program just allowed me to flesh some of that out that I may not have done so. And so I had several aha moments. But really, when it came down just to deciding whether I was going to hop in or not, it was really just trusting the quality of Wellspring. And certainly glad I set the time aside and invested in myself.
Thank you so much for that plug and for sharing it. And I watched you decide if you could move all your schedule over like that. And I watched that agony, and I'm glad you made that decision.
So am I.
So what was it like for you guys to attend?
Well, let me step up, since I still have the floor.
Mhm.
I had a curiosity that borderlined on skepticism, that it was going to be remote, and I don't know if future is going to be the way of life. But the fact is, because of what was going on in the world, it took place online. And I just had a real curiosity: how effective could it be coming together online and kind of doing deep work? And boy, it really was effective. like you guys really figured some things out on how to make it deeply personal, how to do the deep dive work in small groups, and to connect with people through technology. And I was blown away by it. And it was a real pleasant surprise in an area that I had concerns about.
I'm glad you mentioned that because Madeline represents having done this in person. So for the listener out there, we intend to do both in the future. Obviously, it's more convenient to do it remotely, and you don't have to travel, you don't have to pay for rooms, and we had people come from around the world.
All around.
It's more lovely in person where you can look at a pretty view and really get away from life in your home. And so, but it's more expensive. So I think we're hoping to offer both to people. Emily, you wanted to add something?
Well, because it was remote, it allowed for the two people that I wanted to encourage to come, both to come. One came in my home with me to do it together, and that was the kind of support she needed. The other one came from halfway around the world. So that was the beauty of it being remote, and it was amazingly impactful. And I can tell you that I have a deep love for the people that journeyed with me in the small group that we were in. So that's what happened even with technology.
Well, we were forced because of COVID to do our bounce program, which we could only have ever even imagined in person with all these youth. And we were forced to do it remotely. The county said, hey, we already gave you the money, figure it out. And so we did. And we held our fingers crossed last year. And the truth is it worked. We kept the experiential pieces in, we sent them boxes of supplies, and it wonderfully worked. It's working again this year for that. And so, we said we can do this with the adults too. And it did work. So let me ask you to talk about the experiential parts of the program, whether you got it in a box and did it at home, or like Madeline, who got to do it on the property where it was an in-person retreat. Any comments on those parts of the program?
Well, I'd just like to talk about the in-person experience because, and Jim alluded to, being able to set aside 4 days, which I think immersing yourself in it, for me, that was very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And at first, I remember telling Tova, I don't know if I can do this because it's, there you go through a lot of emotions, but it was a very beautiful setting, and it was really nice to have all of the other people that attended and to see that you were not alone. And then we had the breakout sessions, which were amazing. I highly recommend doing it in person. Now, of course, it's great that you were able to offer it remotely, because people really needed it this past year, or probably more than ever. But I highly recommend it.
Thank you for that. And again, we'll be offering it both ways. So hopefully people can do what works best for them. So experiential parts, or the best part, anything you want to comment about details of the program?
I'll just
Artwork. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I love the different art projects that we had to do. They were really nice because they enabled me to put without words into a project how I was feeling and what I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Madeline hit the nail on the head for me, because the using creativity, I'm not an artist by any means, but just tapping into the creative side of my brain to be able to express some thoughts through a drawing, I found to be healing and less burdensome than trying to put the right words together. But it connected me to where I needed to go in a way that was less threatening to me, and just allowed me to express myself and access that space in me that needed to be kind of reviewed and evaluated. So I was really deeply grateful for the experiential parts and my little box, my little care gift that I got with all the cool supplies. And that was really the first, I've done a lot of retreats, and that was really the first one that utilized art in that way. And I found it highly productive for me.
Great.
And the use of the different experiential projects kept, I think, bringing up different things, unique things that wouldn't have happened in a normal therapy type setting, because it brought me back to childhood things. And it also allowed me to think about um, even nature. I did a lot of this out on the back porch because of COVID. Being in nature and working with the rocks, et cetera, et cetera. It just, it kept things present that linger today yet, as I think about drawing and coloring, et cetera.
That's great. Yeah, the reason we use so much experiential in the trauma work is that the memories are stored in the sensory often, and so different things come up. That's a common experience than you would if you're just using the words that we're used to using. So as we get a little closer here, we got to start wrapping up. But how has this impacted your life? 2 last questions, and then what advice do you have for anybody else? You can answer either or both of those questions.
Well, I would encourage anyone who has a thought to jump in to do so. It's painless, and at the same time excises places of pain. So it's a great way to go forward rather than stay stuck where you might be, and learn about yourself and learn about what God might have for you that's been covered up by something from your past.
Thank you, Emily.
I would definitely encourage anyone who's gone through trauma or not gone through trauma, that has unresolved issues in their life, to attend. I found the EMDR therapy extremely helpful, and I still use it today to help me.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I mentioned earlier about having to push aside the excuses and all the reasons why you can't. And I would just invite you to try to find a way to be good to yourself, and then the healthier you can become and the freer you can become, then the more benefit it is for everybody around you that you love and care about. I've learned through the years that you can't heal what you don't feel. And it was a great opportunity to kind of reconnect with feelings that were in there. I've found that, feelings are kind of like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. You can do so for so long, but if it's not addressed, then it's eventually going to abruptly crash to the surface, and then you have to deal with it in kind of a reactive mode. This was a wonderful experience to get in there proactively and just tackle some of the things that are going on in life. And it was very comforting to do so in very capable hands. And so I thank Wellspring and everybody that participated in the Restore event, making it a reality, because I gained a great deal from it.
Well, I want to thank each of you. I want to comment to our listener that God heals our bodies when we have injuries, and he wants to heal our hearts and our spirits, our souls in the same way. And kind of like we have to go to the hospital and get rid of the things that are disease and add new, vitamins or whatever we need. Sometimes we need to be real intentional the same way to heal our hearts. And that's what this is meant to be. We all are pretty familiar with Psalm 23, but it uses that word, he restores my soul, and he guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. And so he does restore us, our hearts and souls, as well as our bodies, and he guides us in paths, and he gets the glory for it, and we get to live better in the process. So
Certainly.
I want to thank you guys. It's time to close out the show, and thank you listeners for joining us today. We hope you got some new personal insights, or that you're encouraged to find counseling or come to Wellspring, whatever's going to work for you to intentionally heal those hurt parts of your life. Again, if you join the program later, you can find us on your favorite podcast channel, Wellspring on the Air, or on our blog on wellspringmiami.org. And the title of today's show is Restoring Hearts and Minds Through Trauma Recovery. So it's time to wrap up. This is Tova and Emily and Jim and Madeline with Wellspring on the Air, because hearts and minds matter.